In 1976, during a Vegas show intermission, Elvis stood alone in a bathroom staring at his reflection. He whispered, "Who are you?" The janitor heard him and replied, "If you don't know, nobody does." What happened in the next 20 minutes changed how Elvis understood himself. This is the story of the stranger who saw through the costume. It was July 23, 1976, at the Las Vegas Hilton. Elvis was performing his usual 2-show-per-night residency. The first show had gone well, technically perfect, professionally executed, but Elvis felt nothing. He'd sung the same songs, hit the same marks, worn the same costume. He was Elvis Presley performing Elvis Presley. And somewhere beneath all that performance, Elvis Aaron Presley had disappeared. During the intermission between shows, Elvis slipped away from his entourage. He needed a moment alone, away from the handlers and yes-men and people who only saw Elvis when they looked at him. He found his way to a backstage bathroom that the staff used. It was empty. Quiet. Elvis stood in front of the mirror, still wearing his white jumpsuit, his face covered in stage makeup, his hair perfectly styled, and he didn't recognize the person looking back at him. Elvis leaned closer to the mirror, studying his reflection like a stranger. The costume, the makeup, the carefully constructed image. It all felt like armor. Protection. A mask he'd worn so long, he'd forgotten what his real face looked like. "Who are you?" Elvis whispered to his reflection. "If you don't know," a voice said from behind him, "nobody does." Elvis spun around. Standing near the door was a man in a janitor's uniform, probably in his 60s, with gray hair and kind eyes. He was holding a mop and bucket, clearly having just finished cleaning. "I'm sorry," the man said quickly. "I didn't mean to intrude. I was just finishing up. I'll leave you alone." "No," Elvis said, his voice catching. "Don't go. What did you just say?" The janitor hesitated. "I heard you ask who you are, and I thought, if Elvis Presley doesn't know who Elvis Presley is, then the rest of us certainly don't." Elvis looked at him for a long moment. "What's your name?" "Carlos Martinez." "How long have you worked here, Carlos?" 15 years. I've cleaned these backstage rooms for every show you've ever done here." Elvis gestured to the sink counter. "Will you stay? Talk to me? I know it's strange, but I need to talk to someone who isn't part of all this." Carlos set down his mop. "I'm listening." Elvis turned back to the mirror, staring at his reflection. "I look at this person in the mirror, and I don't know him anymore. Is he Elvis Presley, the performer? Elvis, the icon? The guy from Tupelo who used to drive a truck? Who is he?" Carlos thought for a moment before answering. "Maybe the question isn't who he is. Maybe it's who you want him to be." "I don't even know the difference anymore," Elvis said. "I've been Elvis Presley for so long. I've worn this costume, sung these songs, played this character so many times that I can't separate the performance from the person." "Then maybe you need to stop performing," Carlos said simply. Elvis laughed bitterly. "I can't. This is what I do. This is who people expect me to be." "But is it who you are?" Elvis was quiet for a long time. Then, "When I was 19, I knew exactly who I was. I was a kid with a voice and a dream. Every performance felt real because I was just being myself, amplified. But somewhere along the way, I became a product, a brand, Elvis Presley. And the real person got buried under all the expectations." Carlos nodded. "I see that happen to people all the time, not just famous people. Anyone who spends enough time wearing a mask eventually forgets what their real face looks like." "How do you find it again?" Elvis asked desperately. "How do you remember who you are underneath everything?" "You stop asking the mirror who you are," Carlos said. "Mirrors only show you what you look like. They don't show you who you are. That comes from in here." He tapped his chest. "From what you feel when nobody's watching. From what matters to you when the applause stops." Elvis stared at Carlos. "Who are you? I mean, how does a janitor talk like this?" Carlos smiled. "I'm a janitor who thinks while he cleans, and I've watched you perform for 15 years. I've seen you on stage giving everything to those crowds, and I've seen you backstage in moments like this when you think nobody's looking, and you know what I see?" "What?" "I see a man who's forgotten he's allowed to be human. You've been Elvis Presley, the legend, for so long that you've forgotten you're also just a person who's scared and tired and looking for meaning." Elvis felt tears forming. "I am tired. I'm so tired of being him, of being what everyone needs me to be. The fans need me to be the king. The producers need me to be profitable. My family needs me to be stable. Everyone needs something from Elvis Presley. But nobody asks what Elvis Aaron Presley needs. What do you need? Carlos asked quietly. Elvis looked at Carlos, then back at his reflection. I need to feel real again. I need to sing because I want to, not because it's scheduled. I need to connect with people, not perform for them. I need to be a person, not a product. So do that, Carlos said. It's not that simple. It is exactly that simple. You're choosing to be Elvis Presley the performance instead of Elvis Presley the person. Every time you put on that costume, every time you do the same show the same way, every time you give people what they expect instead of what you actually feel, you're choosing the mask over the face. Elvis felt anger flash through him. You don't understand the pressure. You don't know what it's like to have millions of people expecting you to be something. You're right, Carlos said calmly. I don't. But I know what it's like to spend my whole life being invisible. To clean these rooms while famous people walk past me like I don't exist. To be treated like furniture. And you know what I learned? What? That being invisible has one advantage. I get to be myself. Nobody expects anything from me except clean floors. So I have the freedom to be Carlos Martinez the person, not Carlos Martinez the janitor. You traded that freedom for fame. And now you're paying the price. Elvis's anger dissolved into recognition. You're right. I did trade it. I thought fame would make me matter more, but it just made the real me matter less. So take it back, Carlos said firmly. You can't change the fact that you're famous. You can't undo Elvis Presley the legend. But you can choose, right now, in this bathroom, looking at this mirror, who you want to be when you walk back out there. Elvis wiped his eyes, smearing his stage makeup. What if I don't know how to be real anymore? What if I've forgotten? Then start small, Carlos said. Tonight, second show. Go out there and sing one song, just one, the way you would sing it if nobody was paying you, if there were no expectations, if it was just you and your voice and the music. Sing one song as yourself instead of as Elvis. Which song? The one that matters to you, not the hits, not the crowd pleasers, the one that you need to sing. Elvis thought about this. There's a gospel song, How Great Thou Art. I've been singing it in the show, but I've been performing it, making it a spectacle. But when I was a kid, I sang it in church and it meant something. It was prayer, not performance. Then sing it that way tonight, Carlos said. Forget the staging, forget the vocal tricks, just sing it the way it needs to be sung and see if that helps you remember who you are. Elvis looked at his reflection again. This time, he didn't see Elvis Presley the icon. He saw a 41-year-old man who was lost and scared and trying to find his way back to something real. Carlos, why are you helping me? I'm a stranger to you. Because 15 years ago, Carlos said, I was thinking about ending my life. My wife had died. My kids had moved away. I felt like I didn't matter. And then I came to clean this venue and I heard you sing. Not on stage, backstage warming up. You were singing gospel songs to yourself. Peace in the Valley. And the way you sang it, it wasn't performance. It was faith. It was real. And I thought, if someone that famous can still have faith, maybe I can too. You saved my life that day without knowing it. So tonight, maybe I can give something back. Elvis broke down crying. I don't even remember that. I don't remember singing that day. That's my point, Carlos said gently. You were just being yourself, not performing, just existing. And it mattered more than any staged show ever could. That's who you really are. The person who sings because they need to, not because they're supposed to. Elvis and Carlos talked for another 10 minutes. About faith, about identity, about the difference between being seen and being known. Then Elvis heard the 5-minute warning call over the loudspeaker. I have to go, Elvis said. The second show starts soon. Go be yourself, Carlos said, even if it's just for one song. Elvis started to leave, then turned back. Carlos, will you stay? Watch from backstage? I need to know someone out there sees me, not just Elvis Presley. I'll be there, Carlos promised. Elvis walked back to his dressing room. His people immediately swarmed him, touching up makeup, adjusting his costume, running through the set list. But Elvis felt different. Carlos's words kept echoing. Sing one song as yourself. The second show started. Elvis went through his usual opening numbers, energetic, professional, giving the audience what they expected. But when it came time for How Great Thou Art, Elvis did something he'd never done before. He stopped the band. "Ladies and gentlemen," Elvis said into the microphone, "I need to do this song differently tonight, if that's okay with you." He gestured for the lights to be brought down. No spotlight, no theatrics. Just softer stage lights that felt more like a church than a Vegas showroom. Elvis closed his eyes and started singing. Not performing, not hitting vocal acrobatics, just singing the way he'd sung it as a boy in church. Simple, direct, real. The band followed his lead, playing softly, sensitively. The backup singers harmonized gently instead of powerfully. And something extraordinary happened. The audience, used to Elvis's big theatrical performances, went completely silent. They could feel the difference. This wasn't a show. This was a prayer. Carlos watched from the wings, tears streaming down his face. This was the Elvis he'd heard 15 years ago, the one who sang because his soul needed to. When Elvis finished the song, there was a moment of absolute silence. Then the applause came. But it was different, respectful, moved, the kind of applause you give in church, not at a concert. Elvis opened his eyes and looked toward the wings. Carlos was there, nodding. "You did it. You were yourself." After the show, Elvis asked his people to find Carlos. When the janitor was brought to the dressing room, Elvis hugged him. "Thank you," Elvis said. "Thank you for seeing me when I couldn't see myself." "Thank you for letting me," Carlos replied. Elvis and Carlos stayed in touch for the rest of Elvis's life. They'd talk occasionally when Elvis was in Vegas, usually in that same bathroom where they'd first really spoken. Carlos became, in a way, Elvis's spiritual advisor, not because he was formally trained, but because he was honest. "Carlos never lied to me," Elvis told Larry Geller. "Everyone else tells me what I want to hear or what they need me to hear. Carlos tells me what I need to hear, whether I want it or not. That's rare." After Elvis died in August 1977, Carlos was one of the people who spoke at a private memorial service. He told the story of the bathroom mirror conversation, of Elvis asking, "Who are you?" and finding, for a moment, an answer. "Elvis Presley spent his life trying to be what the world needed him to be," Carlos said, "and in the process, he lost sight of who he was. But in that bathroom, looking in that mirror, he found himself again. And for the rest of his time here, he tried to hold on to that. It wasn't always easy. The pressures, the expectations, they pulled him back toward the mask, but he kept trying to be real. That's courage." The story of the bathroom mirror conversation has become legendary among Elvis fans and people studying celebrity and identity. It represents something universal, the struggle to remain authentic when the world wants you to be a brand. "Elvis's dilemma is everyone's dilemma, just amplified," said psychologist Dr. Sarah Mitchell. "We all wear masks. We all perform versions of ourselves for different audiences. But at some point, we have to ask, who am I when nobody's watching? Who am I underneath the performance?" Elvis asked that question in a bathroom mirror. We all need to ask it somewhere. Musicians who struggle with the pressure of fame often reference the story. "When I feel like I'm just going through the motions," said singer-songwriter John Mayer, "I think about Elvis in that bathroom. I think about how even the king of rock and roll forgot who he was, and I try to do what Carlos told him to do, sing one song as myself. Remember what's real." Carlos Martinez worked at the Las Vegas Hilton until he retired in 1990. He gave one extended interview in 2005 on what would have been Elvis's 70th birthday. "People ask me what it was like to talk to Elvis Presley," Carlos said. "But that night, I wasn't talking to Elvis Presley. I was talking to a man who'd lost himself and needed help finding his way back. The famous part was irrelevant. The human part was everything." He continued, "Elvis asked me, 'Who are you?' when he was really asking himself, and I told him, 'If you don't know, nobody does, because that's the truth. We're the only ones who can define ourselves. Nobody else can do it for us. Not fans, not critics, not history, just us.' Today, that backstage bathroom is still there at the Las Vegas Hilton, now the Westgate. The mirror Elvis looked into has been replaced dozens of times over the years, but the space remains. Some people on backstage tours specifically ask to see it. the bathroom where Elvis had his moment of crisis and clarity, where a janitor became a philosopher, where a superstar became, briefly, just a person trying to understand himself. The venue has considered putting up a plaque, but Carlos, when asked his opinion before he died in 2019, said no. That bathroom doesn't need a plaque, it just needs to remain what it was, a quiet place where someone could be honest. Making it a shrine misses the point. The point, Carlos explained, was this. Elvis didn't find himself because of where he was or who he talked to. He found himself because he was finally willing to ask the question, "Who are you?" That's the question we all need to ask, and we need to ask it not to the mirror, but to ourselves, deep down, where we're honest. For Elvis, the bathroom mirror conversation was a turning point, not a complete transformation. Old habits and pressures don't disappear overnight, but it was a moment of clarity that helped him in his final year try to reconnect with what mattered. He sang "How Great Thou Art" differently after that night, more simply, more honestly. People who attended his concerts in late 1976 and 1977 often commented that there was a change in how he performed that song, less spectacle, more soul. That was Carlos's influence. That was the impact of 20 minutes in a bathroom with a janitor who dared to answer when Elvis asked, "Who are you?" Sometimes we need a stranger to see us clearly. Sometimes we need someone with no investment in our performance to remind us of our personhood. Sometimes we need to ask the scary question, "Who am I?" and trust that the answer, however uncomfortable, will lead us back to ourselves. Elvis asked that question in a bathroom mirror in 1976. A janitor named Carlos helped him begin to answer it, and in doing so, Carlos gave Elvis a gift more valuable than fame or fortune, the reminder that underneath Elvis Presley the legend was still Elvis Aaron Presley the person. And that person mattered more than the performance ever could. The mirror doesn't know who you are. Only you know that. And sometimes you have to strip away the costume, the makeup, the expectations, and the performance to remember. Elvis did that for 20 minutes in a bathroom, and it changed everything. If this story of identity, authenticity, and the courage to ask, "Who am I?" moved you, subscribe and share it. When did you last ask yourself who you really are? Let us know in the comments. Hit that notification bell for more true stories about finding ourselves when we feel most lost.